Yeah, so I guess I think we can do each probably like spend like 10 or 15 seconds do a brief intro about ourselves, right? So my name is Loy. I'm chairman and co-founder of Kyber. So we have the decentralized trading protocol called Kyber Network, and also we recently launched Crystal, our Web3 wallet, incubated by the team. Yeah. Thanks, John Kelly. Feel free to start.
Sure. Maybe I'll go. So my name is Kelly. I've been in Vietnam now for about 18 years and worked in various roles around finance. I've been at VNG now almost 3 years. I look after the game business and been doing that for a couple of years now.
Hi everyone, my name is Tang. I'm the founder of Coin98. So a lot of people know us that we're building a multi-chain wallet called Coin9 Wallet. It serves as a gateway that bringing Web2 users to the Web3. Excited to join the panel today to talk about crypto and stuff.
So hi everyone, I'm Chung, CEO and co-founder of SkyMavis, the company behind X Infinity. So we build games and the infrastructure that powers them.
Awesome. Yeah. So I guess I think if you're a crypto investor, you know that we are currently in a really bad market, right? I think the most of the major coin are like 80% or like 90% down from the top. I guess just a quick question from everyone, right? Like what are you seeing currently in the market? Like why are we getting into this stage, right? Can start like from Kelly first, because I think you might have like many interesting point of view from non-crypto builders, right?
Sure. So just for context, right? So from an institutional level, we're still seeing a lot of projects being presented, not just in games, but platforms and across many different areas. One thing that we do find interesting, while the coin values are down for whatever reason that we can find, there's still a lot of interesting projects that people are creating and are looking for capital. I think what we have seen through this devaluation in terms of pricing is that people are much more realistic about valuations when they come and ask us to invest. The other thing is that I think there's a lot more choice now versus 8 months ago, where everyone was scrambling to get into certain things. If we look at particular areas of interest, right? I think the game side, I think, still has quite a few interesting projects that people are coming up with. Platforms and different things. I think there's areas that specific use cases that have continued to be interesting. From VNG's perspective, I think we're still looking for interesting ways to leverage the technology into games, not so much in what's been done like before, but just to apply it in an interesting way to traditional games. And we're still looking for things that would make sense for us from that perspective.
Thank you, Drew. Feel free to jump in.
Yeah, from my point of view, I think market have I think everyone already been involved with this market already know that the market have cycles, and we in the last 2 years the market is only going up, so it's pretty normal when it's started to get this kind of correction. And if this is the bear market that people are talking about, I think the bear market already started somewhere around like November last year. So we already like we've been 6-7 months since then. As a builder, I think we don't see much different except that in the bull market it's very easy. There's already a lot of attention put into the market. So if you're going to do fundraising or stuff, it's very easy to get that capital. But during the bear market, things are getting much harder. But if the teams or the projects already have enough money to cover the runway and other company developments, there's not many things different between the bear market and the bull market, because we continue to build and also ship features and also go out there and capture, like, acquire more users. that's the fundamental level that I think we every builder should focus on. And so we built quite nice since during the bear markets, the last bear market. And I think the majority of our achievement in the last 2 years is not because of the effort that we put in that 2 years alone. It's a compound interest of 4 years or 5 years, working hard, and the last 2 years just which is amplified by the market sentiments and the bull market. So so I think right now, given this bear market, it's a very good time to back and focus on building. Make sure that we already have enough preparation for the next bull run.
Awesome. Cool. I think building in the bear market is going to be an interesting topic that later on I will ask more from Chung and Tang. But I think I saw Prady is online. Hey, Prady. So I think this might be an interesting question for both Kelly and Prady, right? Because I think Kelly, previously you mentioned something about there are going to be a lot of more deals and the valuation is more realistic, right? But I think one thing I realized is that I think the last crypto bear market around 2017, 2018, right? It was detached from the from the macro market, right? Like it was only for crypto bear market back then. But I think now there's some sort of I think crypto is more following the macro market, right? Or many people are saying that the recent downtrend of crypto market is primarily because of the bad macro market with a lot of things, right? Like interest rate hike and inflation, but the fundamental crypto market is still intact, like it's not changed. So from institutional investor like Prady and also like Kelly, right? What do you think about that?
Yeah, so maybe I'll have a go first, and my sincere apologies to everyone. I was in an investment committee discussion internally asking for money. So I couldn't step out till I actually got the approval for the money that we were asking for. So my sincere apologies to everyone. I missed the context of the first 10 minutes of discussion, but I think if I understand the question, that's twofold. One is just on the macro impact, right? Is what we're speaking about. What I will say is that our observation is that cost of capital has been close to zero for the longest. And now we are going into a period where there's an actual cost of capital, which is going to be reflected in how capital gets allocated across a number of asset classes, which basically means that any alternative asset class, anything that has a higher risk profile, the bridge between more traditional assets versus these has obviously gone down, right? So I think there's a big impact of that that's coming through. Equally, what that means is that anything that's very high beta, which is what's happened in the crypto space, naturally comes under more pressure, right? So that just fundamentally, I think that's pretty obvious to everyone, hopefully, but that's how we see it. What it does not take away from is the fundamental attractiveness of the crypto space. And I'll probably just spend a minute on that, which is for the longest, we've not had any open protocols on which builders can come and just fundamentally go and build applications on. In fact, I know you're sort of assuming that folks like ourselves would only be capital allocators or investors, but we're also building companies and platforms now. And one of the areas, for example, we're working on live is helping emerging artists. And when we looked at the terms and conditions for any music platform, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, they don't have open APIs. They actually are not built on standards in which we could go build an application to help the musician, right? And that's fundamentally, if you go back, what we think is most attractive about the crypto space beyond any asset price movements. And you're right. So the reason I was at the investment committee was we were seeking a big approval for one of our startups, where we actually want to double and triple down in this environment in order to build in what we think will be a very cold winter, right? So it is a real opportunity. In fact, when we look at not just the companies we're starting, but we're looking at some of the stronger founding teams, we think a lot of roll-ups will happen. A lot of talent will get aggregated in a few good projects. And then for the ones who continue to build quality manner, there will be a lot of opportunity here. So again, I mean, I'm sorry, without the context of some of the early conversations, that's how we're thinking about it. We are more excited than we were in the last sort of couple of years with what's happened in the last 1 week. And I feel for the personal pain for anyone who's lost a lot of money in the space, but just the opportunity to build and to do it in a sensible manner, we think it's more attractive than now.
That's awesome to hear. Is Kelly still with us, or you already drop out?
So Kelly had to sign off at 10. So no, you will in charge now.
Sure. Awesome. Cool. Thanks a lot, Prady. I think a lot of like insightful comment over there, right? Shong and Tang, I think you mentioned earlier that like you guys started like, I think together with Kyber, we started like around like 2017, 2018 area, right? I think that when was the last bear market. So what do you see is the difference between the last bear market and this bear market, right? Maybe I can start first, right? So that you guys can have a couple of minutes like thinking about the answer. But I think so I guess in the 2017 area, I think the bear market started mainly because like a lot of like, new ICO project that raised a lot of fund and then like started like dumping to the market, right? And I think that clearly wasn't sustainable back then. And I think during the bear market then, a lot of question around like whether this is going to be around or whether this is going to be like something that can last for the long run, right? So it's more like an existential question, right? Like whether this is going to be a sector for the tech or it's going to be like, just here for a short while, right? But I think this bear market is quite different, mainly because I think it happens for many reasons, right? I think we have seen a lot of like, funds that got into like, insolvent state, right? And also like a lot of like, risk management from like lending and borrowing protocol like Celsius and a couple of others, or also like, the Terra incident. So it's a lot more about like risks and also like poor management and heavily leverage from all these big firms out there, right? But if you notice, like none of the DeFi protocol got impacted, right? Like Aave, Compound, and Uniswap, and Kyber, and many others out there. They're not like doing anything wrong at all, right? So I think So good luck, like to hear about your thought, right? Like what do you see is the difference between like what's the catalyst for the bear market now and then?
Trung, you want to go first?
Yeah, you can go first.
Sure. I think from what I see is the main difference between this bear market and the last bear market is that the first one is from a product market fit perspective. In the last bear market, a lot of startups raising 2017 and 2018, they start with a very fancy ideas, but they didn't know that if that ideas was validated in the market or not. Given this markets, in this bear market, a lot of ideas already prove that they have a signal to scale up. It's just about we just need to build a better infrastructure, or we just need to modify or improve the mechanism or something like that optimize to scale and serve a better a bigger amount of users. For example, in the last bear market, we haven't had use case like using uploading crypto into games and doing amazing things like Axie and SkyMarket already did. We don't have a lot of DeFi unicorns and already great products like Kyber, Uniswap, or even AV, right? In the last bear market, we don't have we don't see NFTs doing using being used that much, and also a lot of artists around the world can doing fundraising and also capture the upside from their what I created. This bear market, we already saw those signals. It's just like the infrastructure right now is so slow. It's still expensive, and there's still a lot of room to improve. So that's the first thing. From the product market fit, we already see the opportunity. It's just like if any good teams that really put a lot of focus on that, I think the next couple of years is going to be great. The second thing is like talking about capital. In the last bear market, a lot of people raise fund, and those capital allocating to people who cannot deliver what they promised. So this is wrong in terms of capital allocation. So if you are a capital allocator and and assume that in the last bear market, a lot of retail, so you don't know what happens and what the crypto, that just allocating to the people that they thought that they can deliver those things, but it ended up like it didn't, like, right? So those capital, just those I think those failures, they just take those money and they're cashing out. So the money go out of the market. It's not invested into the intrinsic value of the whole industry, so it didn't go up. But this bear market is totally different. So right now we already have a lot of long-term builders with a very high commitment on reinvesting the money that they make in the last couple of years and into the developments and to prepare for a better scale of those companies and protocols. So there's a lot of I think a lot of good signals for the development of the whole industry from the last bear market. And the last one that I want to mention is like the crypto adoption and the awareness about crypto Bitcoin stuff, compared to the last 4 years. So now even the easiest to see, even in my hometown, rarely not much. They already know how to use crypto and what is crypto. At least they already heard about them. A lot of them, and especially the millennials and the Gen Z, they already have the wallet, or at least they have a Binance account. Something like that. It's a very good signal to see that people are adopting this kind of technology. And I do think crypto and blockchain might be a perfect infrastructure for the next generation of the builders and artists and everyone in the world. So so fundamentally speaking is totally different, and we grow a lot since then. So I'm pretty optimistic about the future of crypto. And yeah, Chung, you want to add up something?
Yes, I think this bear market is not unexpected, right? We started seeing the ramp up leading to this bear market, I think long ago, I think maybe even middle last year. I mean, even though we see that the crypto market entered like a pretty good uptrend at the same time, because the inflation was so high, it also brought like a lot of like virtual debt to projects. So eventually they have to pay that down the line, with a lot of growth, with a lot of like problems they cannot solve in a short amount of time. So for projects, I think right now we have more like bigger projects, and at the same time people know how to manage like treasury. So I'm pretty confident that we would still have like many good projects that have enough like treasury going to the bear market and continue to build. And I think the similarities is that like compared to the bear market in 2018, I think a lot of projects will just disappear because they don't have enough funds, they don't have enough like commitment to downscale and then continue building through the hard time. So if you ask about like the duration of this bear market, I'm not sure. I don't think anyone can answer that. But at the same time, I think it's a great opportunity for get teams to continue building. And I'm personally a little bit glad that the bear market has come, so we can focus on building more.
I thought you are glad because you can buy the dip now. Okay, so I think one important point that both Trung and Tang shares that, like, you know, you guys like, I think every crypto project need to build a good treasury, right? Because I think one thing that I really like, I mean, many people said in the crypto industry is that, like, you know, time in the market is not as important as time in the market is more important than timing the market, right? So you need to make sure that your company can survive, right, and can have enough like WordPress to survive through the bear market. So speaking of that, I think now in this bear market we have like big institutional investor like Temasek, right? And Prady, do you have can share any advice or anything about like how like project can raise fund from like big institution like Temasek, right?
Yeah. So I mean, I wouldn't say specific to Temasek, right? Because we're not here just talking about us. A few golden rules I would suggest is some of these may be obvious to people who are in the building business, but we say this to all our companies is first and foremost, be aware of the environment you're operating in. And the environment we're operating right now is very uncertain. So it doesn't really matter whether it's crypto or not crypto. You got to make sure that you have enough runway, because some of the problem statements are not easy to solve for. So just make sure you have enough runway, which then leads to the next thing, which is what is the problem statement like that we are solving for, and are we truly addressing those problem statements with proper product market fit, or are we just creating an environment where people think that they will speculate and therefore just make returns up, right? So I think that in this environment, it becomes all the more critical to articulate that to investors. And then what I would say is that right now, I think projects would be surprised if they actually go and speak to investors with very, very clear thesis and proof points on how they're actually solving for it. I think that's what the founder should focus on, and not focus that much right now on, you know, just how much dilution is coming, you know, what is my current valuation, so on and so forth, and raise enough so that you can attract the talent that is in the market right now. I mean, I can't emphasize this enough, that the kind of talent that is becoming available, both from existing projects we've seen in the last few weeks, but also people remain very interested to build in the space. I don't think that conviction I am seeing sort of reduce, but it's going to be very important to be able to articulate that, right? So I think that's how I would sort of suggest approaching any investor, as opposed to what we may have seen in some projects for the last, you know, few quarters. Yeah.
Got it. Trung, I think you guys raised a really like very first round during the bear market in 2017, right, or 2018. Can you share any like, you know, insight on this one? Like, how did you manage like to raise the round back then?
I'm not sure it is the first round. So we started raising by the end of 2018, and we only managed to close the round by the middle of 2019. So it's pretty late into the bear market back then. Not that early. It was pretty brutal. So without that round, maybe we would be out of business. So the experience building in the bear market and raising fund also, I don't think we can seek for a lot of like aggressive plays. We can only manage to like to find like small wins. Sometimes we have to raise from the retail investors or the players at a much lower valuation, whether it's about like the company or the product valuation. So after getting a little bit of traction, I think we can like get to institutional investor and then try to raise a little bit more, just enough to operate. I still think that we can manage to survive and even more than that, grow in the bear market. But obviously, it's not a good time to acquire users because obviously users in the crypto space, they also lose a lot of confidence and they will not be coming back with a pretty like positive mentality. So I think projects need to be prepared for that. At the same time, a thing that can have like some compounding effect in the bear market and even like after the bear market, that thing is like products. So I think by investing into people, growing the team, maybe not in terms of size, if like a team doesn't have, if team don't have a lot of resources, but maybe like investing into the individuals and also at the same time, like continuing solving the problems with products to prepare for the market when it's back could be a good thing.
Awesome. Yeah. So I think yeah. So okay. So I think a lot of the audience, a lot of people in the audience here are actually crypto builders, right? And I think it's this probably like, you know, is the first bear market for them. So apart from like building a good word trust and making sure that the team is going to have enough runway, any other advice for them to survive through this bear market and thrive in the next bull run? This could be the last question for the panel, and after that we can open the question to the floor. Probably starting from Prady.
Yeah, so do not hesitate to pivot your business model. I mean, in addition to everything that we've discussed, I was sitting down with the founder 2 days back, and they were running a gaming guild, for example. And they've been thinking about, actually, they've got a set of engaged customers in that context. And how do they then deliver more value to the customer? So they've already iterating on, and from, as you said, like you raised your funding in the last winter and then you survived through it because of that. They've raised their funding, they've got enough runway, but at the same time, they are already thinking at this point of, yes, we've got the core business, but what are the additional products I can now build? And don't hesitate on, I won't say pivot, but just like adding new product lines and thinking about, you know, with this engaged community, you know, what can you actually do with them and what more can you sort of do that? So I wouldn't sort of go into this winter thinking like, oh my God, conserving cash means that I should not be testing new product and sort of going into that, right? Actually quite the reverse. Thinking about what is it that I can do with customer. And it was a great conversation I had with this particular founder. And it was really amazing because when the founder came to me and shared this plan, it's a very early stage company, but it gave me a lot of confidence. And in fact, the engagement levels went up. And, you know, in whichever way we could sort of help with the ecosystem connectivity, otherwise we're very willing to engage with the founder. Just as an example of what to be doing right now, as opposed to kind of withdrawing. Yeah.
Thank.
Yeah, sure. I think the first thing to survive in this bear market is to have a strong beliefs in the future of blockchain and crypto. So this is what I bet, you know, back in the day. I think in 2018, I would predict that, you know, there would be a bull market somewhere in next 2-3 years. But it's lead to another question. So if I want to be successful in that, you know, bull market, you know, what should I prepare and what I should build to put myself in a position I can capture those upside? Back to, you know, it's just like there would be a checklist that, you know, what I should be working on, and then building good products and brands and community takes a lot of times. Is also a bit annoying, you know, when you're building in a bull market as well. So in a bear market, I would say that, you know, it's a very good time for you to aggressively, you know, focus on building your products and put yourself in a very good position. You want to do that. So we don't know when the bull market is coming back, right? So it might be tomorrow, it might be like 2 months later, or, you know, maybe 6 months or 2 years. In terms of runway, I think as long as you can manage your runway of the company, you will do well. Given that right now in Vietnam, I think this is the advantage of auto builders in Vietnam, especially because, you know, the cost to fund for a small team is not that high, and you can easily raise those money. I mean, like, 2-3 million US dollars can easily to fund for a small team to build in 1-2 years. That's already, or even if you can, your runway is only long last for 1 year. You know, after 1 year, you build a lot of stuff. You can come back to investor and you can raise more because you know what you already built shows the confidence for the investors that, you know, you guys have the potential to go big in the next bull market, so they will fund you. And raising 1 million, raising hundreds of $1 million in one round is hard, but like raising 1-2 million to just cover the runway is not that hard, even in the bear market. So I don't. And given that right now there's a lot of, you know, wealth, individual wealth, retail investors can easily to fund those money. So so first, don't be very pessimistic about, you know, the bear market. I think you should focus on, you know, preparing enough runway for your development, let's say in 2 years, and then start as a founders. You should thinking about what would be the next big thing in the next 2 years or 3 years or even 5 years. And then if that happens, how do you prepare to, you know, become the biggest player, you know, in that field? And then it's come back to a checklist of what you should working on in a bear market. Bear market is perfectly for talent acquisition. Is you know, it's a very good way to focus on improve the product and stuff. So when the market, I think, you know, in the bull market, if you can do all those things in a bull market, you don't need to do much things. Like it's just like, you know, or everything was already prepared. Bull markets just take it off.
Awesome. Sure.
So it's a little bit hard to hear, but I think the best thing that you can prepare for the bear market, actually what you should have done in the past, right? Just have prepared enough capital, enough runway for the team, for the company to operate in the coming, let's say, months and even years. I still think there is a lot of capital waiting to be deployed, but it will be, well, even though if you are in a position to in a good position to receive capital, let's say you are the market leader or something, or you have like a lot of traction even in the bear market, still the valuation or the negotiation will not be on the company side, obviously, because it's not the seller market anymore, right? Right now, people are hesitant to invest into companies, into projects, into teams. So if teams want to raise, they would be in a less favorable position compared to what they could have in the like previous like 6-8 months. So well, I think people like have a lot of good points already. So not trying to add like more duplicate points, but team morale won't be a very important thing. In the bear market, one thing that I experienced is that, like, even though you continue building very hard, there's a lot of highly that you will not get a lot of traction, and for teams, for individuals, it will be a bit hard to imagine, because like even though if you put in a lot of effort, you cannot get small wins as you normally have. So it would affect the team morale, and then the problem of like retaining talent could be very crucial to any like teams and projects.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for a lot of like, you know, insight from the builders and also like a big investor like Prady. I think we also survived through the bear market in 2017 and 2018, right? So I think one thing I realized is that like during the bear market, everyone focused on building, right? Less noise, less distraction, less like, and people are like more like fundamental driven, right? Like people care more about like, you know, what the actual integration, instead of like, you know, just announcing, hey, this is a new like flagship partnership without any backup, right? So I think that was a great time for like any good builders out there, right, to start like building and preparing for the next bull run. Yeah, and I think this is also like a good time for everyone like to start actually like reviewing the space, looking at like, where we are lacking as a space, and that could be like the next thing for you to build, right? Because I think a lot of like good companies was built during the bear market last year, in the last cycle. So I think that's all the question from my side. So let's go for the question from the audience. So I'm gonna pick 2 or 3 of them, and we can answer. Okay, so there's one question from. Okay, so this is probably a very common question, right? But could be interesting to hear from Prady and Tang and others. Okay, so the question from Quang Chen from Apota. So do you think there's a sustainable business model which is not dependent on the token price of the project?
Yeah.
Prady?
Yeah, so I think we're kind of mixing again the asset and the price aspect of it versus the business, right? I would not even jump onto a call like this, or we would not spend any time. We just see too much opportunity for us to spend time in a particular space if we did not believe there's a sustainable way of generating business value, right? I don't think what is sustainable though is that you can simply say everything becomes a token. That doesn't make sense, right? Like if everything just became a token, then it just wouldn't make sense. Like literally, there's no value accruing to that, right? There has to be some cash flow, etc. So therefore, yes, there are sustainable business models we think where I'll keep saying this, which is open data. We sometimes forget fundamentally why blockchains are a thing, right? It's making it truly composable, and people can just sort of build on top, right? So I think the opportunities is just absolutely immense. Every particular part of the internet economy can have an application in the crypto context, right? Now, will it be easy? No, because a lot of the activity still does not exist within the crypto ecosystems. But tokens are also a way of making sure that we are disrupting the way traditionally capital was allocated, where people like us actually come in with large amounts of capital and most of the value just accrued into traditional equity structures. And with tokens, you can now actually have value accruing to people who are actually contributing to projects. And therefore, I think there is sustainable value there. I'm not commenting on any specific project here, right? I'm just saying that as a means and a mechanism, and there's a question on DAOs, which we can talk about separately. These are just new means and mechanics of actually capturing and distributing value. So I'm on the firm belief that there is sustainable value. Every iteration of technology or business model goes through different versions. And typically what will happen is you look at version 1 or 2 of anything, and people will start criticizing that because they're not really thinking about, oh, what is the next version and the next version? Yeah, sure. Are some of the economies that exist today sustainable? They are not. But does that mean that new versions will not emerge? No, new versions will emerge. And that is what we are looking out for constantly and working with founders to see if we can participate in it.
Awesome. Cool. Trung, do you want to comment on this? Because I think you guys did both like equity fundraise and also like token fundraise, right? So you might have some insight on this.
So I think, yeah, like Brady said, not anything has to be tokens, and people seem to be mistaken a lot between like exchanging of value using tokens and like capturing and like distributing values using tokens. So a little bit regarding the story of having like both equity funding and token funding. I think the point is that like we need to have like enough aligned incentive between 2 or even more like a set of audience. So the first one, equity shareholders, and the second one, token holders. So we need to align so that like the company behind a certain crypto projects, they can not only focus on like growing the company or either like growing the token / the community. Like if if it's only one way or the other, then like there should be like one set like missing out on the growth value. So aligned incentive is very important in this case. I think one very simple solution to that is to let the company have like a portion of the total supply of the token, and it should be invested over time. So the company has enough incentive to continue pushing for more value for the token grant ecosystem, and also at the same time, the appreciation of tokens could also help the company to grow in value, and they have incentive to continue building more. So that's one like story I want to add into the discussion.
Interesting. Cool. We have another interesting question coming from Vinh Vũ, right? So because I think this is interesting mainly because like we have a lot of like builders who are Vietnamese here, right? I think probably most of us. So your view of Vietnamese blockchain communities, builders, and also the environment, right? What I'm missing to promote more innovation and the growth in the blockchain ecosystem here, right, in Vietnam?
Yeah. So would you like me to take that?
Yeah, maybe we can start from Thang because I think they have a really great community here. Yeah.
More innovation and growing ecosystem. I think like the education is a very, playing a very big role on this. I think we have a lot of experience on building the community, especially educating Vietnamese users over the last 4 years. It's a very, very long-term games. You cannot expect to see the result in 6 months. If you want to build a strong community, I think you better want to plan for a very long-term plan, and start investing that. Maybe like your investment and your effort put into building a community today, you're gonna see the result maybe in 1 year or 2 years. Everything in building. Another thing is that building communities also have a compound effect. Because you're gaining more trust as long as you have, have a very good community. People very enjoy, being a part of the community, and then they go out there and they introduce more people to join in the community. So focus on the quality, also very, very good way to I think, I would rather recommend that people focus on building a quality community rather than just the numbers. A lot of teams, I do see a lot of teams that, initially just focus on, like trying to bootstrap the numbers along. Yeah, I think in long term it's really hard. The way that you build in the community, focus on the quality, focus on caring about them, focus on the value that you're contributing, and the value of the whole community. That would be the main key point to view a very good community. And this is a long-term game. Everything compounds. You cannot expect to see a very short-term result out of this. But if you're at the end of the day, if you commit to build that long-term, maybe like 2-3 years later, you're going to be proud, and that community will be your biggest moat compared to other brands as well, because it's pretty in an open source industry like blockchain and crypto. It's very easy to fork the code, but it's pretty hard to fork the community. So
interesting. How about from the builder side, Trung, and also Prady as well, because I believe you have spoken to several Vietnamese builders, right? And do you have any insight on where they're lacking, and how can they improve, right?
So I think Vietnamese builders are great hustler, right? I think Vietnamese people can take like good opportunities very fast, and also at the same time they are willing to get their hands dirty, to do everything they can in order to push the team forward, in order to get to the market. I think it's very important for bootstrapping any kind of project, not only in crypto, but at the same time, after that initial period, we need to compensate for lack of experience with something else, right? We need to have like a good team. We need to aim for more long-term growth, and I think that's one thing that I don't see much in Vietnamese projects. Maybe because we are still like too busy fixing problems instead of like focusing on like forecasting a little bit about the future, and also like preparing for um, for um, for growth, and also like preparing to deal with future risk. But it could also be because of like Vietnamese people's characteristics, and also like maybe with a big help from the community. They see they expect like short return. They expect returns in a short amount of time. So maybe that's also one thing to affect like Vietnamese crypto projects a lot.
Prady, any quick words on this?
Yeah, so just one quick comment is, and this is not specific only to Vietnam, I think we underestimate the level of innovation that comes from our region. I actually think some of the new business models come from places like Vietnam. We've seen that, and I think there needs to be just more conviction from builders in order to not just copy what's happening in other markets and replicate that in Vietnam, but think about those new business models. And then the second thing, at least I would like to see more out of the region and from Vietnam, is more foundational work. There's no reason why with such strong entities, we cannot be building more foundational companies, including work at the protocol layer or scaling and privacy. It'll be good to see that more foundational aspect as opposed to replicating what we might see coming out of the US or the Western world. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's quite interesting to see like a couple of several like Vietnam crypto companies actually are the trendsetter, right? Like for example, Axie Infinity actually started the play to earn trend, right? And I think yeah, back in 2017, I think Kyber was also like one of the few first decentralized exchange, right, in the world. So good luck with to see more you know, leaders from the Vietnam communities in the blockchain space. Cool. Yeah, I think that's pretty much from I think if you find any question that you think interesting and you want to answer, feel free to, you know, pick it up. Otherwise, I think any last sort of like thought to share with the community before we move to the fireside chat with Prady. We will talk a lot more about like institutional investment and also like Temasek as well. Trung Thanh.
I think my last word is like to just keep moving. Don't give up. That's it. As long as like timing in the market is much more important than time the market. You as long as you don't give up and you survive, you maybe at least 4 years, you know, when the bull markets come back, everything will be easy, and you will have the opportunity to shine. So just don't give up, and then doing things.
Cool. True.
So one thing that I see that people ask the most, even in like even in a bull market, is that like what is the next big thing? What is the next trend? And also in the bear market, people like ask like, so after this bear market, what could be the next big thing? My personal take is that like especially at the beginning of a bear market, it's pretty hard to like even predict what could be the next big thing. Everyone is busy solving treasury problems, so like people don't even have enough time to think, to theorize, to experiment and come up with any kind of new cool ideas. So I don't think we can have like people working on the next big thing really that early. Maybe like after 6 months, after a lot of things like settle down, we'll start seeing new ideas start being implemented and released onto the market, and then we'll see like some iteration after that, right, in order to get to the next big thing. So after that questions, I think people are expecting like some magic happen. But in the bear market, I don't think like I don't think it's all about any kind of magic. In the bear market, it's more about like operation. It's more about optimize the operations, optimizing and well spending fund in a wise way. So I think right now, if like people are still hoping for some kind of like magical thing, I think it's time to like put it aside and focus more on the people, the product, and also the operation.
Cool.
No
Yeah,
new
I guess.
no innovation for now.
Yeah, so my typical answer for the question is like, what's going to be the next big thing is, it's going to be the thing that you are going to build, right? So go build it instead of like asking for what it is, right? Cool. Thanks a lot, Thanh and Trung, for the sharing. Hopefully, after this panel, people will learn a lot from you guys, and we are gonna build the next big things, right? And I think, chị Lan Anh ơi, moving next, we are gonna have the fireside chat with Prady, right?
Yes.
Cool. Hey, Prady. Yeah, so we are gonna probably have like 20 minutes of fireside chat in which you can share a lot more insight about what you guys have been doing, and also what's Temasek view in the crypto market, right? So I guess I think because you came a little bit late, so it's good. It's a good opportunity to, do a proper introduction so that everyone understand, like, who you are and how big Temasek is, right? Because I think a lot of people probably don't know yet.
Yeah, no, I'm more than happy to do that. So for those who are not familiar with Temasek, it's an investment company owned 100% by the Singapore government. It's got a global presence. Offices actually in Vietnam. We were one of the first few to have a presence in Vietnam, one of the longest standing presence in Vietnam, with Lan and Wu and the team on the ground now. I don't know, quite very long. I forget when we started the office, but it's global. It's everywhere from ASEAN, obviously, to China, India, Latin America, Europe, US, global presence. Within that, technology has always been a big focus area. My own personal background is I come from a financial services background and led a lot of our global activity, which by extension, actually in the early days of crypto, led into blockchain. We looked at both enterprise use cases as well as crypto. For the last 4 years, we've been focusing as Temasek on a more horizontal basis. Now, we are a $300 billion balance sheet, so that's our own capital. And within that, we have identified in the last crypto winter, and I do want to emphasize this as one of the key focus areas for us. I know there's a question here about blockchain being broader than crypto. We think about it as, have always thought about it as more, how do you create open ecosystems? And they could be networks, they could be protocols. And we have a two-pronged strategy. I lead that effort overall as a managing director here. We build businesses, so we don't simply invest in businesses. We build businesses in areas that we think are white spaces. So actually, there's a question around verifiable credentials. One of the businesses that we built, a startup, Affinity, has been pioneering verifiable credentials for more than 2 years now. So I know now that's getting a lot of attention, but that's something we identified and we've been working on for more than 2 years. We built a real-time payment solution for wholesale called Patheon with JP Morgan, DBS, and others. We built a capital markets OTC platform using smart contracting and blockchain technology called Market Mode with SGX. So that's sort of the whole build aspect. We are also now building businesses in the pure Web3 construct. So we're working on a music platform, we're working on a digital fashion platform. So a number of areas where we think there's a lot of application. So you can see the conviction is quite deep. And obviously, if there are existing founders of projects like people on this call, then we will just go fund you or fund the project. But if you think there is something which founders are not willing to take up a challenge, and it may need large institutional support or may need a brand like us to get behind to get talent, then we're also happy to get involved in building from our side. On the investing side, we started investing in the last crypto winter, again, in very small amounts to make sure that we fully understand the space. We did it through a fund partnership with Distributed Global out of the US. Through that, we got exposure to a number of global projects. And since then, we are now actively investing both in funds and in early stage and growth rounds in companies. So you'd have seen some of the names publicly, and then there's a number of companies which we've done smaller investments directly as Temasek. So that's the overall span of activity for Temasek. Everything from building to investing. And on the investing side, we continue to look for very high quality projects and founders, which we can back and support them through the journey, including in an environment like this.
Well, that's actually a lot of work, incubating and also like investing at the same time, right? So I think this is what I also like, tell a lot of people as well, that the main difference in this, or one of the important difference in this bear market is that we have a lot of big institution investors, right, around who have like, billions of US dollars waiting to deploy. So as long as like, the builders, they can actually find or build something interesting, something that, have a lot of potential. There's a lot of capital waiting out there to invest in the project, right? In compared to like the 2017 or 2018, there were only like a few sort of like crypto native funds, right? Who actually do very well, but like, in terms of like AUM, they are a lot less, right? Compared to the big funds at the moment. But speaking of that, like, what do you think is the main difference between like Temasek and also like a few other like blockchain native funds, right? Or crypto native funds?
Yeah, so we don't look at it that way, right? We see this as a community. I think Tan was talking about earlier. We don't really see this as, are we different in the, I mean, we do think we're different in many areas, but we see this as community first. Yeah, I want to clarify that. But yeah, how is it different for us is we have chosen always to be stage agnostic as a firm. And we can come in very early, we can come in very late. What that also means is that we can support projects through the life cycle. So there's, even in our traditional investing business, non-crypto, we do that for a number of companies. We come in early with smaller checks, and then as they grow, the capital grows. We don't try to edge out other investors. We try to work with the other investors, with the board, with the founders, and just sort of grow with them. And in some cases, they need to do M&A financing, so we come in with that. In some cases, they just need strategic input from us, so we support them on that. In some cases, when they want to do a growth round, they want us to lead it, we can lead those rounds. Or they may say, we want external validation from a new party. So then we would be, if we continue to believe in the project, obviously, if we don't believe in the project, then we will not support them in future rounds. But if we believe in them, then we just continue to support them. So I think what's quite unique for Temasek is that we take time to form conviction in an area, but once we form conviction in a particular area, we can work with them across the project. So that's one. Second thing, which is unique to the crypto space or the broader blockchain space for us, is that we are taking a much deeper approach here, where we can now even start doing technical contribution to projects, in addition to making introduction or just having a name sort of as a validating factor. So we've begun to hire talent where if there's a community proposal that needs to go in, we can actually do that. If you have to make some contributions, there's sort of domain knowledge, etc. So we're going much broader because this space is different. This space is not like any other technology space, which tends to be very, very centralized. So therefore, we are also adapting our models in order to be able to contribute to this in different ways.
That's very interesting. I to be honest, I was quite surprised when I heard about like, the building and the incubation arm at Temasek, right? So how did it actually started? And like, for example, like, how do you find the area that you want to like incubate and build, right? Because I think it's probably the common question for many of the builders here who are still looking for the next thing to build.
Yeah. So it came as a result of a bottoms-up strategy from the team. So it wasn't like a top-down consulting-driven approach, where in 2018 and 19, when we were still going through the winter, we identified a few areas where we thought there was a real problem and the technology could be applied. And then I speak about this quite publicly. We looked around. In some areas, we found some interesting projects, but in a number of areas, we found that no one was willing to build at scale in those areas. And that's where then we said, okay, if no one's going to do it, then why don't we get involved in building? And it was, I call it my Jerry Maguire moment, where you kind of say, let's do this. And then, of course, you go around and like, oh my God, as an operator, it needs a lot of effort. So we went on this journey now for the last year, where we started in some cases with us literally hiring, the first person, getting the office space, opening the bank account. So we've been through that journey now multiple times. And each of those cases, we're trying to keep it open. And the ethos is very clear. We don't want to compete anyone out. So we open to partnerships and we want to open up the data. That's fundamentally what we're doing on the building side. But each time we like an area, we first look for founders and we look for projects. And if those founders and projects are there, especially for very technical projects, then we will just go back to founders and play more of a investor role and someone who can contribute to the projects.
That's very interesting. Cool. So we're talking about this, crypto winter, right? And so what do you think is going to be the catalyst for the next, bull run in this crypto market?
Yeah. So I think it's difficult to predict the catalyst. What I'm pretty convinced about is, so everything goes through a recession and a cycle, everything. It is healthy. This is like saying no one should get fever and then, you give steroids, which is fundamentally what we did in the financial markets for the last 15 years. Like economic getting damage was not an option. So we always said, central banks came in for whatever the reasons may have been for them, and they just pumped so much money that crypto actually in some ways is a social movement. It's a social movement against governments printing money, and it's a social movement against technology companies on becoming more centralized and locking in data, right? I mean, fundamentally, that's what it is.
Right.
And if you think about the catalyst, therefore, for the next phase is really, we need to finish this cycle. And I don't think it's just about crypto. This is about all that excess capital and all the issues that it brought, along with obviously the growth we brought in the tech area. We need to just sort of flush through that cycle. And it'll take some time. This will not happen in 1 quarter or 2 quarters. So it'll just take some time. So the most real concrete catalyst is when everything normalizes. And then you will sort of see that. Second, I do think the catalyst will be much like any public company, and we're getting used to this in the crypto world. Quarter after quarter of consistent performance is going to be important. Not just in terms of MAUs increasing, actually MAUs will decrease for all projects in the coming quarters because a lot of people who are on the fringes will just drop off. But that core cohorts, what we call the power users in the internet economy, if you can show that you have power users who are consistently using your products and that stable cohort is then beginning to grow over a period of time, you will find that that will create the next catalyst in terms of investors coming back in, interest coming in, etc. Right? This is the adoption curve, which if you can do and sort of swap it out, it is really what I think will be the next catalyst. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. So I think a lot of builders, a lot of Vietnamese builder. I think so at Kyber we also have our venture investment arm, right? And we have been talking to a lot of Vietnamese builders, right? And I think one thing that we see, one common thing that we see from many projects is that it's actually very hard for them to to get in touch with reputable institutional investor like Temasek, right? So what is okay? So I guess the question is why do you think that is happening? And secondly, what's your view on the like blockchain ecosystem in Vietnam, right? Including like, regulation and, talents and like, the market here, right?
So I know it's difficult to get in touch with large investors, but actually that's not unique to crypto only and not unique to Vietnam.
Yeah.
There is in every ecosystem, there's a stacking order where there are funds, there are individuals who support ecosystems. So I think Vietnam is going through that cycle where it has caught everyone's attention, it's got enough talent, quality projects coming out, and therefore people give a lot of credence to any association with Vietnam now. And you will need that time to pass where enough capital gets allocated to projects coming out of not just Vietnam, but Philippines and Thailand and across the region. Also, just keep in mind that fundamentally crypto brings new economics. And I don't think it needs to follow the traditional path. There can be much broader community-led funding which can come through. Actually, the cost of operating can be fundamentally lower in crypto. And this goes back to the contributors benefiting from the growth of the ecosystem. I mean, a very simple example is for every Facebook like and post and everything else, imagine if it was getting some sort of a token, then the equity shareholders would not get disproportionate benefit from the value creation, but actually it would be a community project. Right? I mean, I think this goes into a much deeper discussion on, how do you share value? And there's a question around DAOs itself. I mean, arguably, it starts creating new ways of organizing labor and talent. So it's actually a horizontal, it's not a vertical. I think sometimes people start talking of DAOs as if it's a vertical. It's not, right? It's a way of organizing ourselves in order to conduct our activities. Now, mutuals and cooperatives have actually been done in the past, but DAOs in the context of crypto bring a very unique way of doing it. It brings problems, and the non-believers will always be like, no, this doesn't make sense. But as we keep solving each of those problems, you will sort of find that. So I mean, hopefully that addresses the question, right? Like, I understand it's difficult, but it's difficult for every founder. So if you think it's easy for Temasek to get funding for its own startups, it's not. So just to show everyone there, it's actually not easy. We have to still go convince people to fund. I just came from investment committee. It dragged longer because I had to answer a bunch of questions, and it's not easy, right?
Right.
The Vietnam community, by far, I think, is one of the most interesting communities that's developing in the region. Both China and India have taken a very different view. China has obviously taken a very clear view as far as aviation is concerned. Even the Indian founders are tending to not build so much in India now. They're looking sort of outside India because of capital controls. Vietnam has been interesting because I think it's a very pragmatic approach, given the context of fundamentally not being a fully convertible currency and an economy. And I think what's important actually for the ecosystem to strengthen is to remain open to that approach, but also for projects to focus on high quality builds. I think the more high quality projects that come out of Vietnam, the more talent will be convinced of betting their long-term careers on this, and the more capital will come into the country to support it without causing any regulatory concerns from that. But if it goes down the track of only chasing token prices, then I think it will create a longer winter, because we don't benefit from the same depth of talent in the region that the US has, and the very, very open structure that the US has. I don't think Asia benefits from that. So we're going to be very, nothing to be careful about, but I think we just have to be doubling and tripling down on quality projects. Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, if the audience noticed, there was a lot of like alpha was shared by Prady, right, in his first answer, like, social network to earn and things like that. I think that could be the next thing that you should build. And I think you mentioned something about DAO, right? I think this is quite interesting because, like, I think we have seen like DAO for many things, right? I think we have seen like DAO for like governing the project, or DAO like for investment and things like that. Do you think it's gonna like, actually like replace the corporate structure that we have been like, having for centuries, right?
So, basic question to everyone. we're talking about Web3. There are large parts of the world which are not even on Web1. Okay,
right.
So think about it logically, right? Including in Vietnam, there are some people who are not even on Web1, and therefore, I don't think this is mutually exclusive or binary as an outcome. Corporate structures will remain. I mean, there are monolithic societal structures that exist in the world today, and it is a question of how do we want to organize ourselves. If we want to truly organize ourselves like a community, then a DAO structure is fantastic. So one of our fund entities is doing its first DAO membership as we speak. And it's great because I think that's a great way of contributing to the community. But then in certain structures where you need centralized control, command of execution, then sometimes you need the corporate structure. Because you actually don't need, because then it's complete chaos if the entire community is coming and contributing and debating, and you will have a very like a dysfunctional, almost like a democracy in certain context, right? And it's not like governments will go away, so on and so forth. So DAOs have a very clear role to play. Jokingly, I say that it might even remove modern slavery in some form, right? But it has a role to play. But I don't think it replaces corporate structures. It's more in what context do you need community of builders to come? Maybe even come in and out more flexibly, where you don't have to be necessarily being dedicated to one project or one company. Actually, many of us are dedicated to, like in Temasek, I'm dedicated to Temasek. So everything I want to do outside Temasek, I need to take permission from Temasek. But if I'm actually an individual contributor or a freelancer, I could contribute to a number of DAOs and projects, right? And it's a much more efficient way of doing it, as opposed to going and seeking projects or jobs from individuals.
Interesting. So I think what I also noticed is that like even with the DAO structure, right? Like eventually there are going to be like one or two people or a couple of, or some more set of people who are going to like stand out and to become the leader of that community, right? And also another thing that happened quite popularly in DAO is that like many people there are anonymous, as in like you don't know who they are, right? And what's going to be their incentive. So do you think it's going to be like an issue, right? Like for institution investor like Temasek to invest in like anything DAO related?
Sure, I think it'll be definitely an issue. Something as simple as a panel. I went for a panel where there was someone on my panel who was actually anonymous.
Right.
It is a unique experience for me, but it's very common in the community where someone's actually not disclosing their identity. So as something as simple as a panel, are we going to be comfortable being therefore part of DAOs? Yes, as long as we feel comfortable with the reputation of the community. Are all institutions going to be comfortable? No, but if the community is effective and it is there, then why not? I don't think I know every Vietnamese, but does that mean I don't do business in Vietnam? Right? That's I don't need to know every Vietnamese to do business in Vietnam or Philippines or Thailand, Singapore, or India, or anywhere. So.
Awesome, cool.
Right. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Prady. Thanks everyone in the panel today. So our time has run out. I just want to say thanks to everyone attending today. If you're here, I'm sure you know about Endeavor already. If you're not, we are a network founded by entrepreneurs and for entrepreneurs. We also have a fund, but very small. Basically, money from entrepreneurs to invest in each other. So that's what we do. And sometimes we do events like this to help the community to build the ecosystem and to educate the market. So if you are running a scale company, reach out to us and we are happy to help. So thanks a lot, Prady. You're very busy today, but you're here at last.
Thank you for the opportunity, and apologies to everyone for turning the schedule around. Really excited by the builder community here and by what's happening, not just in Vietnam, but the region. And look forward to meeting many of you in person now that borders are open. So thank you.
Thank you, Lars.